wrote, and it's not too long, but he was after a very contentious meeting in the office, and he was who he was. We are here to be warriors for justice, and more specifically, protect our clients. It has never been, nor will it ever be, an easy job. We did not seek these jobs out because they were cushy or would make us rich. It is about the clients, no matter how hard they may test us. I am proud to work with an amazingly talented group of young and not so young lawyers. My door is always open if anyone wants to discuss any of this at their convenience. I mean, that was Steve. He was there for all of us. And I realized today that Steve was the most important guy in the public defender office. He really was the most important guy. When you needed to settle an incredibly serious case, a homicide, you didn't come to me. You went to Steve Cline. And 4 out of 5 times, he'd go see the DA, and he probably could settle your case. Nobody else, none of the 200 people here could do it like he did it. So this was an all public defender thing, but Judge Frazier has come down from above, and you wouldn't do the honors? So Steve decided maybe he wanted to be a judge. And he actually had tremendous traction. Mike Smith, who's out of town, has talked to me several times about the traction that he had. And Tiffany knows all too well how close he was after his Jenny interview. But Judge Frazier said things like, Mr. Cline is an excellent lawyer. He combines an exceptional legal mind with superior advocacy skills. His legal skills are evidenced in the positive outcomes his clients receive. Mr. Cline has an outstanding reputation in the courthouse with judges, attorneys, and court staff. I would rate him highly qualified for a seat on this court. What else can I say? Wednesday morning, I put out an email and I said that I was struggling with the loss of Steve, and that I needed some help from my brothers and sisters in the office, and would you please just talk about your experiences with Steve. I think we said you can hit the reply all button, and that was Wednesday mid-morning, and I think about 65 responses later, we were all laughing and crying at the emails that we got on the reply all. We have put them together. And there's more to come, I am sure. So I can give this to you guys now to read over the weekend, or I can keep it until I get all the responses.
Whatever you want to do, honey.
I'll hold on to it. You make a decision.
There you go. Sorry, I can't make it.
So I'm sorry. I preempted.
Oh, no worries.
Full, remarkable turnout for a person that was just larger than life, and cut a wide swath through so many there's nothing more pathetic than an old man who cries. So I'm going to try to be as quick as I can and then turn it over to other people and let them cry. But he was so big and so involved, so happy, so wonderful, so silly, a boy in a man's body, just ridiculously fascinated with poop. Personality. And he had a way in a world of bullshit to just be so real, so reliable, and just everything to everybody. So, on Tuesday, I immediately went to his office to find something to steal.
Nobody else can do that. Not until Tiffany gets in.
I was looking through all this stuff, and Everything was too big to steal and too obvious. So I was looking through his bookshelf. And found a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, which was the first book I ever read without being told to read a book. And my whole life, I thought it was a coming-of-age book meant for boys. And then my daughter read me the first page about Holden's brother Alan. And it's not a coming-of-age book. It's a book about grief and how we're supposed to move on from loss, and how loss is inevitable, and change is inevitable, and aging happens, and that you take what you have and you hold on to it as long as you can, and then you move on. We're so lucky that we had him for as long as we did.
Amen.
That he was everything that he could have possibly been in his life, and everything to us that we needed him to be. So in the book, Holden's sister Phoebe says, "What do you want to be?" And he says, "I want to be the catcher in the rye. I want to be there when the children play and fall and catch them." And that's what he was. He was the guy that would catch you when you fell. He was the guy that would make you know that it was possible to do what you wanted to do. He was the guy that would support you no matter how ridiculous your idea was, no matter how hopeless the cause, no matter how hungover you were on a Saturday morning to play softball. He was the guy that would convince you that you could still pick out one of those softballs and hit it. He was the guy that would walk with you to court and convince you that you could win the motion. He was the guy that would meet you in his office in private practice, and you'd talk through your cases together, and you would conspire to wrest that drop of justice that you could out of your case. He was that for everybody. So I'd like for some of his friends to come up now and to share what he meant to you, so that his family can know that it wasn't a job. Okay? It was his life. And his life touched so many people. So, let's go.
Public defender whatsoever. My name's Jeff. I'm an attorney over at Higgs, Fletcher & Mack. He certainly had his public defender's family. And trust me, he viewed everybody as family, not friends. So what does that mean? It means Steve will shoot it to you straight. He will absolutely not bullshit you. And it's a lost art in this day and age. But I have the privilege of being his guys out of the courtroom, out of the public defender's office. You see all the law defense's shirts, and it's the law office of Steve Cline. So I heard about Steve, didn't meet him yet, heard about Steve 12 years ago now, when I joined Higgs as a law clerk, and I was told by our coach that, hey, Steve Cline, we have a rivalry with him, he's brash, he's arrogant, he's a prick. And be careful. So, okay, so we played Steve like the following week. I played a couple balls on the 8 freeway. Fantastic. No surprise, the following Monday, our coach comes up and be like, hey, you'll never guess what. Steve sends an email and says, you used an illegal bat. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, this is a co-ed softball bar league. Like, this guy's everything I'm going to be in 30 years, so how do I beat this? But the next part of the communication was, hey, Steve wants your phone number because he wants you to play for his guys. And so for the next 10 years, I had the privilege and distinct honor of running with these guys, and who made a great turnout. Some of us are attorneys, some of us aren't. But that evolved into, seemed to be like every 2 months or so, we'd go get a nice dinner, and we'd sit there and just talk. And Steve was the easiest person to talk to. You might not like what he said, but everything he said had at least an ounce of truth. He liked to exaggerate at times. And as close as you all are with him, I can tell you he loved his softball guys like they were his own. He paid for everything. We're still going to ask for jerseys somehow, some way. He took care of us at the bars. He took care of us everywhere. Certainly he was a titan in the courtroom, but many of us, and I know some of the guys will validate this, they look to Steve like a father figure. And looking around and seeing some of the tears that have been shared, I think a lot of people standing here right now view Steve as a father figure. So with our heaviest hearts, we love you, and together we'll all get through it.
Very quick second, I wrote an email today about how I was inspired last night. I wasn't sure what to write. I want to take a second to actually introduce Mr. Soriano, his family. This is the person that inspired me last night. He gave a presentation. He is now what we want, what we expect when we defend people who are wrongly accused or even rightly accused. But I want to have him speak to you just so you can see that this is Steve's legacy. His family is here. They're all decked out. So I just want you guys to hear from him.
Yes. Thank you. I'm also a trespasser. So 16, 18 years ago, I was caught up in my lifestyle. I've been out now 12 years, created a family. I'm the CEO of Youth Empowerment, helping our reentry population, our youth, adults, prevention in the schools, et cetera, et cetera. But 18, 17 years ago, I got a case. And so this case consisted of me getting pulled over. I was on parole. When I was on parole, what's your address? And I gave them my address. And so the police department, they went to that specific address and they found some things. So I ended up getting charged for possession of several items. And in that process, I go to the county jail. I'm facing a lot of time. I already have a strike. And I'm looking up for lawyers, right? Like, who am I gonna get to defend me? And so I did some research, and Stephen G Cline was my man. He was my man. So I called him, hey Stephen, I need your help, I need your guidance. This is not what happened. He's like, don't worry about it, I got you. So we went to court, first court, second court. They start wheeling and dealing. Stephen G Cline and the DA, because he had a lot of great relationships established with DAs and judges. So they went to the back room, they started doing some talking, and I can remember this vividly. He comes out the room and he's like this. So I'm in the back looking at him, and I'm like, oh my God. And he got me an 8-month prison sentence for attempted possession. I didn't know that existed. So I barely found out about this yesterday. I was doing a presentation, and then after the presentation, I'm talking to Brick, and I'm like, hey, where's Stephen G Cline at? Like, because I seen his name on the office, because we did a training for the public defender's office. So I seen his name, and I was like, I need to connect with him. Then he told me the sad news, and so here I am with my family on the way to watch the Padres play, and to me, that's a true definition of a lawyer, of what that looks like. And so let's just give it up for Stephen G Cline.
What we want you guys to know is that we are the individuals with lived experience. And it's you guys who gave us that opportunity to come home, show us how to do the right thing, and now we're testifying in court on you guys' behalf about gang intervention, about what it looks like. So you guys have to understand, man, we're not here without you guys. whether it's getting us on an 8-month sentence. Me, as a former prisoner, I never heard of an 8-month term someone given. It's always a year and over. So to have those type of individuals like yourselves that's willing to go all the way down in the dirt with us to get us out of there, the results are having individuals like us helping you guys win these cases. So thank you guys a lot. I appreciate it.
I woke up this morning and couldn't stop thinking about what's going on today and what's happened this week, and I wrote a few things down, so bear with me because I'm going to read it.
You got to do your Steve voice.
Easy friend. I would venture to say to almost everyone he met, certainly to his fellow public defenders. Steve had a way of making you feel seen, which was mostly a good thing. And even when what he saw was something that he saw fit to rib you about, he managed to do it in a way that you couldn't help but laugh at yourself along with him. It's been a blessing to be reunited with Steve on the homicide advisory team this past year and change. He was the perfect asshat. If you know, you know. I wish I had told him that. I hope he knew.
And you did.
He made it fun to come to work every day, which is admittedly a weird thing to say about a job when you're overseeing 140 homicides. But it's true, and I will miss him so very much. Sitting in the office next to Steve for the past 14 months, I've learned a lot. And not just because the walls are painfully thin. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about any of you guys. For example, listening to Pink Floyd apparently helps you get motions written. You're never too old for fart jokes or Crocs with headlights. And when you're kind and generous to those around you, it comes back to you many times over. Steve gave everyone who knew him a little piece of his heart. Maybe he was too generous in the end, and he didn't keep enough of it for himself to keep him going any longer. My ask of each of you is to take that piece of his heart that he shared with you and pay it forward. Be a mentor, be a teammate, be an advocate, be a teacher, be a prankster, be a friend. Be a little more like Steve. We'll all be the better for it.
Here, here.
There go the curly food and here comes trouble. Come on, Aaron, you gotta
Bravo! Here it comes.
We started off in reception, and Steve Cline was immediately our protector. He came by and he let us know if anybody messes with you, give us a call, and the code name is Bananas. And he was truly our protector. And I just wanted to tell you all that in my heart, I am a little baby lawyer because Steve Cline prepped me for my civil case against Carmack. And I dressed up that day and I went into the courtroom with all confidence that I was going to present my case, and I knew they even admitted that I was wrong by admitting that someone else did me wrong. But you know, I believe that I'm a little baby lawyer in my heart because I went to the school of Steve Cline. And after that, I dressed up and I ran around in the courthouse like I was a little lawyer, court carrier. And now I'm the mail carrier. And the morning of his passing, I got to have a moment with him in the morning. And I walked up and he was walking, but I was behind him, and so I got to see Steve Cline from behind the view, and you know he has that walk. And so I was like, look at Steve Cline. And then I said, Steve Cline. And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, hey, Curly Sue. And I didn't know that that was going to be the last Curly Sue that I would get. But you know, he looked good and he looked well. And the message that I got after I calmed down was that Steve Cline did not wake up to die that day. He woke up to live. He woke up to fight. He woke up to be a defender. And he did that till his dying breath. And it gives me encouragement to live each day to the fullest. He gave us this gift of his beautiful wife. You have family extended that you don't even know. I told him I was going to introduce him to his granddaughter, my daughter. Where's Courtney? Courtney got the message. She saw the bitch. She said, "Oh, you're going to be paying for college." She says, "I have my own grandchildren." Oh my goodness, but I loved him. He was a wonderful man. He will always be remembered, and we will always remember him for teaching us that we are PD strong, we are PD strong, and we will survive, and we'll never forget him. His memory lives on forever. Through us all, carry the message and live life to your fullest. Do not hesitate to show love, to give a helping hand to your fellow man, because that's what life is about, and he showed us that. I didn't get to know him long. I only knew him for 4.5 years. That 4.5 years impacted me. When I said I wanted him to introduce him to my daughter, it's because I chose him because of the qualities that he had and the man that he is. And she didn't get to meet him, and they didn't get to meet each other, but you have a granddaughter.
All right, Louise.
Everything everyone has said is so true. I did not know Steve that long, but I got transferred from South Bay in our office in 2018, and my office was one away from Steve's. And I remember getting this email one day, right when I got transferred to TC, and it was from a DA asking for me to sign a protective order on some discovery on a DV case. And I read this email many a times, and I asked my supervisor at the time, Peter Will, what? Why would I do this, right? Like, why would I do this? And then I was like, let me talk to somebody else. So I walked down, and I see Steve, and I was like, hey, how are you? I'm Stephanie. Can I ask you a question? He's like, come on in, sit down. And I look around, and I'm like, what is this office about? What's in his office, right? His windows are closed, his blinds are shut, it's dark, he has his own lamp set up. He has files just stacked. Oh my gosh, like 10 feet high. Holy. And I'm sitting here looking around like, who is this guy? This is like the right office I need to be in. And I look over and I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question? He goes, absolutely, whatever you want. I said, great. Why would I sign a protective order for discovery on a case that I'm entitled to? And he goes, why would you? I said, thank you, right? And I gave him the protective order, and he goes, he ripped it in half. And I said, who are you again? And he was like, oh, I'm Steve Cline. And I was like, I'm Stephanie Ruiz. You're my best friend. I love you so much. And that was it. Like, from that moment, I loved Steve Cline. And then your dog passed away.
Oh, in January, yeah. His dog, yeah, baby.
And if you don't know me, I love dogs more than anything in the world. And we connected on that so much.
Lunchbox?
Lunchbox. I gave you the blanket.
Yes, made me cry. A lot.
Because I lost one too.
I know.
And he and I also gave him that Frenchie tape dispenser. Can I have it back?
Oh.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just saying the same. I saw it every day and I was like, you're Frenchie, I'm Frenchie, we love each other. And like, he was always your advocate, no matter what. And he always had your back, no matter what. My personal life was shit in 2018, and Steve Cline made me feel like I was on top of the world. I'm so sorry that he's gone. I saw him on Friday, and we were talking about my homicide. For a little bit, just very little bit. Natalie was there, and I remember seeing his picture frame right behind him, and it was all of his digital photographs. And there was one of you and Steve in Paris for Christmas. And I looked at it right past him and I was like, God, Steve, you look so happy. And he looked back and he goes, oh, I was so happy. Do you remember, Natalie? I'm also very loud, if nobody knows. So Courtney, like, popped her head over and she goes, oh, it's you, hi.
That's you, hi.
And I was like, oh, we're just chatting, Courtney, you know us. Just chatting about all the things. And I literally remember saying to Steve, fuck, you look so happy. You look so good. And he stood in the hallway and he goes, because I am. I am so happy. And I was like, God, you're so skinny. What happened? And he goes, because I needed to. And I was like, I'm just so happy for you, Steve. And he mentioned his nephew. And he said, it was great. He goes, my nephew's here for the whole summer. And it's great because we're playing video games every day. And he's like, and we're telling these fart jokes. It's great. And I'm like, oh man, Steve. Yes. So I loved Steve. And he loved both of you so much. And I do remember Steve saying that all of the attorneys in the office he was so proud of. Like, no matter what was going on in his life, his case that took so much out of him that he would talk about, he was laughing and he was telling jokes and he was always like, what do you need? What do you need? And we lost someone not only in this office but in this world that was just so amazing for everything that he did. And I will say, I don't think he's a Gryffindor. We took that test. You were there that day. We went to your house. I don't know if you knew this. But now, I guess I should tell you.
did. Maybe clean it all up.
Okay.
No, because I rang the doorbell and she's like, who's at
Who's at the house? Okay. So Steve.
I thought I did.
Yeah. Okay. So Team C, Steve was like, come over to my house. And I was like, oh my gosh, let's get some pizza. Let's have some beers. We'll have a great day. And he wanted us to come over so bad. And he was like, come over. Come over. Oh my gosh, bring everybody from the office and come over. Tiffany probably's not going to like it. Everybody on I was like, okay, great. So we invited like 6 girls. Because, you know, Steve's a girl. We all knew this. He loved to shop. He loved to gossip. It was great. And we all went over. We got pizza. And he actually took the Harry Potter test. I'm sorry. I love Harry Potter. So we all needed to know what was Steve. And we're laughing. He's like, so I'm Gryffindor. Like, what's that? And we're like, that's the best house, Steve! Obviously you're the best. So I just have to say, he was the best. And like, no matter what.
All right, I'm gonna try to do this without crying. I'm not very good at that with these things, but a long time ago, a bunch of us used to go to spring training every year. And it was a bunch of public defenders. Some of you guys are here, some of the guys are not here right now. This was in the 90s, and it was really an excuse for a bunch of us to get together, watch some baseball, drink some beer, and hang out. And it was a great time. And every year we kind of started off the same way. We'd get together at the airport, and we'd have a few drinks. We'd get on the plane, we'd have a few drinks. We'd land in Phoenix, we'd have a few drinks. So that was kind of how things started. And one year, we get to the airport, we have a few drinks, we get on the plane. Doug Miller goes, hey, can I have a drink? Because the flight attendant's going around serving drinks. She says no. Doug says, well, why not? She says no. And he just says, look, I just want to know why you're not going to serve me a drink. And she won't let it go, and of course Doug isn't going to let it go because he's Doug. Steve was always a big part of these trips. He would bring equipment along so we could play softball, and he was always a big part of it. He was an important part of the trip. On the airplane, Gary Gibson was there. He was kind of sitting up in front of me a little bit with Richard Gates. Andrew Brown, some of you might know Andrew. Andrew was a public defender at the time. He and I were sitting next to each other. We're right across the aisle from Doug. Behind us is Steve. I think Mike Garcia was back there too. And we're all watching this.
Gates was the one that was cut off. Don't interrupt.
You're not getting a third-party instruction on that.
So Doug is just going, look, I just want to know why you won't serve me a drink. And she won't answer that question. And so she says, if you keep this up, I'm going to have to get the captain. And Doug is like, just tell me why you won't serve me a drink. She marches down into the cockpit and gets the captain. Now, meanwhile, Andrew and I are sitting across the aisle from Doug. We got a bottle between us, and we're just watching this whole thing. And it's very entertaining to us. So the captain then comes marching down, goes to Doug. What's the problem, sir? Well, I just want to know why she won't serve me a drink. She's not going to serve you a drink. I just want to know why she won't serve me a drink. Sir, if you keep this up, we're going to have you arrested for interfering with the duties of a flight crew. Doug's like, I think one of her duties is to serve drinks. You're not serving me a drink. I want to know why. So the flight between San Diego and Phoenix is pretty short. So at this point, the captain realizes he should probably go land the plane. He goes up to the front, to the cockpit. He lands the plane. Everybody's calm and chill. There's like no big thing. And we all line up to go up the jetway. Now, Gary and Richard are up towards the front. I'm in front of Doug with my friend, with Andrew, who's also a public defender. Doug's behind me, and Steve is somewhere behind Doug. So we start getting off the airplane, and we get to the jetway, and there's the flight attendant with 2 police officers, a couple of Phoenix's finest standing right there, and they're like blocking half the jetway. And the flight attendant is looking at everybody come off. And so we come walking off, and she sees Gary, and she goes, that's one of them. And she sees me, there's another one. Andrew, there's another one. And so the police officers are like, excuse me, sir, but we're gonna need to see some ID. Now, we're public defenders, right? All day, every day, we tell our clients, you don't consent. You don't consent to a detention. You don't consent to a search. You do not consent. So what do? Oh, sure, officer. All 3 of us are going for our wallets. Now, while this is going on, Doug is coming up the rear. He's public enemy number 1. And so he's coming up the rear, and the flight attendant is looking for him. He just pretends like he doesn't know us and walks right by. He's just gone. But then she sees Steve, and she goes, there's another one. And the police officer looks at Steve. There's 2 cops. One says, excuse me, sir, I'm going to need to see your ID. And Steve looks at these 2 cops and says, I know you don't have probable cause. You know you don't have probable cause, so we're just going to leave. That's what we did. And that was Steve. He was a fighter, he was a friend, and he always had your back. He always had your back. I'm going to miss him so much. I'm so glad he came back to the office. I'm so glad. I mean, for my own selfish reasons, I got a chance to work with him a little bit more. I got to see him more. And so I'm happy about that. But the best part is that he got to work with the younger lawyers. And so he lives on in our office, right? Like, he taught people how he worked and how he did the job, and they will carry that on in their practice. And that's going to go on. It's not going on.
That wasn't the only time the police showed up on that trip.
That
was what I wanted to talk about. That was a very Steve-worthy speech. He asked to think about what Steve meant to us. I met Steve in 1991. I was a 3rd year and he was a 1st year. He saw me do my 3rd year trial practice trial, and he was forced to be a juror. And he came up to me afterwards. This is the first time we met. Didn't know each other. And he goes, I'm glad I was forced to be a juror on your trial. And then we started as public defenders together. Steve and I lived together in 1997. We met our significant others together while we lived in that house. We weaved through each other's lives like a river. So here's a story from Phoenix. All good stories came out of spring training. I got one funny story, one serious story. Doug, the root of all evil at spring training, brought a friend who none of us liked but Doug. Suffice to say, we had a lot to drink, and I wound up strangling him. No, I mean actually strangling him. To the point the cops were called. But he had a lot to drink too. Always pick your victims. And when he was being interviewed by the cops are saying, who strangled you? I'm not sure if you got bruises on your neck. Who strangled you? He goes, all I remember is the dude had buckles on his shoes. And I was wearing a pair of boots. And Steve had on his work shoes with buckles on them. And he's standing next to me. And he hears the guy say that. And we both look at his shoes. He goes, oh, this is some bullshit. I have dozens of these as part of my life with Steve. I have permission to tell this story. Steve and I are living together. I meet Julie, who is a new lawyer on the Central Misdemeanor Unit. Julie and I start dating. The first night we spend together is in the house that Steve and I shared in Point Loma. Julie, with the increasing sunlight and the decreasing blood alcohol level, felt somewhere between ashamed and embarrassed. And decided at that moment in time was a good time to sneak out of the house. So carrying her shoes in her hand, she slowly walks down the stairs and locks eyes with Steve at the kitchen table with a big bowl of Count Chocula in his underwear and nothing else. And sees Julie coming down the stairs and they lock eyes. And what does Steve say? He's a keeper. That's my life with Steve. He was something to everyone. I'm not going to tell you what he was to me.
Because he was the most milquetoast looking fucker of all of us. As you can see, it didn't really work out too well. I was thinking the other day of the moment I met Steve, and I couldn't figure it out. I 30 years ago, but I don't know where it was. Was it in the hallway? Was it out at the softball field? I just don't remember it. But funny enough, I do remember exactly what I was thinking at that moment. And it was that, the first time I met that guy, I said, I want to be friends with this guy. Okay? That's what I just distinctly remember saying that to myself. Because he was so full of life. He was so funny. He was a guy's guy to the very end, from every poop joke that he ever said to everything in the end. And it just struck me how I just couldn't remember where it was, but I remembered what I was thinking about him. And to me and to so many of us, Steve was family. Steve was family. It's what makes going forward now so difficult, thinking about that what I've lost is not just a friend, but what I've lost is a brother that I've lost. Now, I've got a poop story. I can't sit down here without saying one more. So, Gary, Steve, and I, back in the day in the old building, we used to go to lunch at Caparel's all the time. It was probably the only place within walking distance that you can go have lunch. We used to call it Crapparel's, right? Going down. Menu was a little different back in the day. And I remember Steve always had a good way of discussing his poop stories with everyone. And the funny thing about Crapparel's was that He goes, hey guys, it's kind of funny how when we're walking to Caparel's, we're all okay, but when we hit the SDG&E building coming back, we sort of have a little bit of a different gait, don't we? That was Steve. Okay. The funny part was that once we got back to the building, okay, I go to my office, I sit down, right? I get a text message and I pop my flip phone up, right? And on the flip phone, right, there's a picture of, the biggest turd you will ever see sitting in a public defender toilet right there. Okay? Now, Steve and I didn't work on the same floor back in those days, right? And as I was looking at the picture and showing it to Gary, we said to ourselves, it's like, oh, that motherfucker, I said, look at the tile in that. That's our floor that he Tiffany, I was the best man at your wedding. I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember for the smile that he had on his face, how he made us all laugh that day like he did every day of his life. I'm gonna miss him. He was like a brother to me. He was family to me, your family to me. He loved you so much. He talked about you with me so much all the time. Okay, I just want you to know that you have a family here. Okay, in the fact that Steve has made us exactly that for you. Okay?
You guys are talking Japanese. I'm not in the field, but I'm the old lady down the street at the Shell gas station where he stopped every single morning to get his drinks and to get his Captain Crunch or Apple Jacks.
He did not tell me that.
And when he would come, snack on little tubs of Apple Jacks. And when he would come in his casual attire on his scooter, I knew it was day to the office. When he came nice and dapper in his suit and tie, I knew he was going to court. And before pandemic, when I would occasionally work on a Saturday, because I don't do Saturdays or Sundays, I'd see him in his softball uniform, and I knew it was softball. And then there were the days where he had his honey-do list to the Home Depot because he was so excited about he was doing something around the house, and I would think, wow, what a wonderful. And I've probably known him for more than 10 years. What a nice guy. Takes care of his home, takes care of his wife, and just has it made. And we became, I would say, friends every morning. And I would tell him, "You sure your doctor knows you're eating that?" and then he lost weight and he was looking great and he was working. And then I saw him a few times with his dog, walking his dog, and he's just a great human being. You all know him as a colleague, as a lawyer, as many beautiful, wonderful titles. But I knew him as a human being. And 2 years ago, my husband died suddenly, tragically, of a heart attack. And he came in one morning, and I think somebody must have told him. And he was always like, "Are you okay, sunshine? You're gonna be okay, sunshine. You're gonna make this. You're gonna go on, and things are gonna get great." And he was just that type of person that always came in the morning, cheerful, ready to start his day, giving everybody that worked there a positive little message to go forward. And I saw him Tuesday morning. He came for his 2 drinks, cashed in his lottery ticket, and I was teasing him, and he did win $4. and he bought the next 2 draws, 2 tickets, 5 draws, a lottery ticket. And I teased him how he had switched up his Captain Crunch for Apple Jacks that morning, and said, "Have a wonderful day at court today," because he was on his way to court. And he told me, "Yeah, it's going to be a long day." And on my lunch break, I got the call from one of his colleagues that we happen to know in common. And I said, no, it can't be. I just saw him. And she said, "No, you couldn't have seen him. That must have been Monday." I said, "No, I'll pull up the receipt. Right now." He bought 2 lemonades and he bought his Apple Jacks, and he's going to court. And
one of the young attorneys that had the pleasure to know Steve, he was my introduction to this office, and he taught me a lot, but a lot of what he taught me wasn't what he said about the law. It was just watching how he interacted with people, how he interacted with court staff, interns, paralegals, attorneys,
And that's going to be the biggest lesson that I take from Steve. It's just how he treated people. I'm another one of those young attorneys. I say that with all seriousness because that's how I see myself when I think about Steve. I was on the CMU, and Frank Barone was the junior member of the CMU team that I was on with Julie. I learned how to say the word fuck in court from Julie. I just remember constantly going to the felony floors and looking for Gary and looking for Steve. And then Steve left the office. And people started retiring as my career progressed. And I kept on asking them, like, who are our mentors going to be? And they said, well, Dan, you're the old guy now. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, no, I can't be the old guy. And then thankfully, Steve came back. I can't remember the advice that I got. It was so long ago, but the thing that I remember is the last interaction that I had with Steve. It was on Monday. I'm sitting in the back of the training room thinking I'm important because the investigators on my team are getting trained, and I'm just sitting there with my arms crossed, and Steve just walks behind me, just grabs my ear, and just walks past, and I'm like... And I'm thinking nothing of it. And then as he comes walking back the other way, I'm still not paying attention. He grabs the other one just for good measure. He's giving it out. And it was just that playfulness, that youthfulness that was always there. He could be talking to you about the most horrific fact sets that you'd ever hear, but there'd be a joke there, and there'd be a lighthearted moment that would keep us going day in and day out. And it's part of what made me love this office. It made me feel like this was such a family. And I know that Randy talks about us being a family, and if you had any doubt about it, look around. It just made us feel like such a family because he was there to pull on your ear to make you feel normal for a second.
So I learned of Steve Cline from Leanne Sabatini. And if you know Leanne, she's not easily impressed by people. But she talked about him like he was a god. And so when I first met him, I was incredibly intimidated because of how much Leanne talked about him. And then he took us to lunch one day, and he didn't really care about anything else but knowing about my kids and how I was doing in the practice. And then I got my first homicide, and I asked him if he would walk it through with me. He's like, yeah, let's go to lunch. It didn't matter how many times. We went and had pancakes way too many times at Swami's. And he always made everyone that was with him feel special. During the pandemic, he was coming into work every single day. And I was also coming into work because I was trying to get away from the kids. And so we often got to spend time together, and he was such an amazing mentor. It didn't matter what kind of question, he never made you feel stupid. I always questioned my abilities, and he always pumped me up more than necessary. And I think that that's what's so incredible about Steve, that he made you feel special. He did leave me a gift. During the pandemic, one day I brought my daughter, and he called me and said, hey, we're gonna go get pancakes. And I said, well, I have Natalia with me. He's like, oh, even better. So he takes both of us to Swami's, and he tells Natalia, hey, have you ever heard of the no-see-ums? And she's like, no, what does that mean? And he said, no-see-ums are what you blame for anything that you don't want to be responsible for. So if, like, you don't want to pick up your toys, just tell your mom, like, I didn't make the mess. The no-see-ums made the mess. And I got to tell you, Steve, we still talk about the no-see-ums in our house. So Leanne, as great as you described him, you didn't do him justice, because he was even better than that. He was a leader. He made you feel special regardless of who you were. And I think that's a testament for all of us that are here. So I'm gonna miss my dear friend.
I have to do this because Julie's here. Dan Tandon was our intern, so just be aware of that. Everybody's been talking about the first time they met Steve, and mine was very different than Mike's. I wasn't going to talk, but when Mike
said that as soon as he met Steve, he immediately had to be friends with him. My interaction with Steve when I first met him was very different. I can tell you exactly when it was. It was January of 1996. I was a third-year law student at Cal Western. I was doing my first and only internship with the office. And I was told, you've been assigned to Steve Cline. I think he was on felony transition at the time. And they said, go find him, you're gonna be his intern. So I walked into his office, I'm like, hi, Mr. Cline, I'm Frank Bruin, I'm gonna be your intern. And he's like, I didn't ask for an intern. I don't need an intern. You go back and you tell him I don't need an intern and find another assignment. So I walked away thinking, who the fuck is this asshole? That was my first impression of Steve. Clearly over the years, 27 years later, my impression changed very quickly. We were on the softball teams together, we hung out together, had a lot of fun together. But I also want to share one of the last interactions I had with him. He and I had been texting about trying to resolve a case that was in my office, and we were trying to get a hold of each other. And I called him, he didn't get me, he called me. We were playing phone tag. Finally, I texted him like, hey, give me a call when you get a chance. He calls me just as I'm about to walk into the chiropractor's office. I have a bad back. And I don't know why I texted him this, but I said, hey, I'm about to go into the doctor's office. I'll call you back when I'm done. Well, in typical Steve fashion, he writes, well, I sure hope they check out that enlarged prostate of yours because that'd be really painful. So I get my back adjusted, I come out. First thing I do when I get in my car is I call Steve. And 5 minutes, rapid fire of enlarged prostate jokes. The entire way back to the car, right? And then we finally talk shop. And of course, it was exactly the conversation we needed to have to settle the case. So that was the dichotomy of Steve. All business, but also all fun. And that's what I'm gonna remember about him.
Oh, I love him.
Private bar attorneys that came from the public defender's office. Sitting on the board of the Criminal Defense Bar Association, I knew Steve when he was in private practice before he went back to the office. And then when I went back to the office, I walked into his office one day and I was like, Steve, can I ask you a question, as everybody has said? He's like, absolutely. And I shut the door. I go, why the fuck did you come back? And he like sat down and gave me the whole story. And then for the past 5.5 years, he has always been a confidant to be able to go in and sit down, especially for me who has a hybrid sort of practice between being at the public defender's office and private practice, on maneuvering the politics of the private bar, maneuvering the politics of the public defender's office, the private bar that has cases. Dave Shapiro is a huge fucking advocate of Steve's and a very dear friend. Dave advocated for him to get the Warhorse Award, which Mary Ellen Attridge got it once, Steve recently got it. I mean, just as far as, I'm shaking now because I don't like this. Dominic and I recently shared a case, and he's like, I was talking with Steve about it, and he's like, oh yeah, Dominic called me last night. So not only did he love the public defenders, he loved the private bar and all of the attorneys and the interns and the law students and the post bars. And then his neighborhood. When Steve was on his scooter, I would be walking down the street and Steve would be on his scooter, and then because we lived in the same neighborhood, or then when he was off of the scooter, and how much the community loved him and how interactive he was with the community on just like the overall bigger, brighter, if we could all aspire to that loud, straightforward, honest, from the heart kindness. I'm going to put you on the spot, Dave. I know you're super good friends with him because I'm going to hit you up later. But again, just from the private bar and the public defender's office, thank you all for how much you all meant to him and what he meant to each of us.
Hold a candle to most of these words, but a couple contributions. One, in addition to softball and spring training shenanigans, we had this event that we called the Stupid Bowl. And the Stupid Bowl took place on Thanksgiving Thursday or Super Bowl Sunday, and we would get together up at Pioneer Park, and we would play some of just the worst, most dangerous football that you could possibly imagine. And we had a great time doing it. And I remember sitting on the sideline one day, and Steve was sitting there with us, and Gates' youngest, Spencer, this is going back a ways, so Spencer was probably 13 or 14 years old, walked by, and he just casually dropped an insult right on Steve, Steve turned around and just zinged him right back. And it was really clear that they had this thing that they did, and that they did it all the time. And I could have listened to it for hours. It was just priceless. And what that means for someone as brilliant as Steve to be just locked into a battle of wits with a 14-year-old, I'll let you all kind of ponder that. And the second thing, I think, just for the family, is to belabor the obvious, but I mean, every single person here, it kind of is saying a lot of the same things, which is when I started, there was Steve. I mean, whether your career began 3 years ago, 23 years ago, for a few, more like 33 years ago, everyone says, when I started, there was Steve. And I also noticed that if you fast forward to this horrible Tuesday, and people were trying to make sense and talking, and stunned, and later texting, and now dozens of emails, everyone had just spoken to Steve. I mean, everyone within a week or two, most within a day or two, some within an hour or two. And you just have to ask, how could this person be everywhere all the time? And I just decided, whether he was there or not there, his spirit was there. Yeah. And it touched all of us.
To let Tiffany know, Steve really did try to eat that Catalina Crunch cereal, the healthy one. He really tried for you. I was his office mate. I was trying to help him with the healthy foods, but he did try to eat. I know we heard about the Apple Jacks, they're just so much tastier, but he did try.
And tired of standing. It's just a quick story. I wanted Dave to tell it because to me it's a reflection of what I know Steve would want every public defender to be, because he was my super Steve.
Yeah.
He was my hero, and he was a lot of people's heroes. Quietly, so many things I didn't know, and I always knew he was amazing. That was a no-brainer. I was the one that, the bowl in the China store, and he'd be the one behind me cleaning it up and being like, it's okay. You know, I'll fix it, or I'll take care of it, or, you know, don't sue us, I got it. But the one thing he mentored, he loved everybody, and he believed in defending me. We really, really did this motion he had for 6 weeks. I could hide it because I sat there every day, and he would be working on it, tweaking it, because he had perfection for all of his clients. It didn't matter. And I love the fact that somebody came to Dave's office. You want to tell it, or you want me to do it?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I just love this.
So I've known Steve for a long time, 15, pretty much when it started, right, as an attorney, back in the Steigerwald days and the 2.5 days I think he was there before he wrote a 2-page manifesto that I got to proofread. It took me about an hour to read it, and then he left. And we stayed close, we stayed connected, and he, in many ways, he was and always will be a brother, a father, an uncle, far beyond here. And I used to laugh when he went back to private practice. We had an office. I got to rent space from Steve, and it was a blessing. It was nice to have someone there. On Saturday when I come in, he'd be there. I don't know what the hell he was doing at the time. He was playing a video game or had a fucking helmet that he used to walk around with. But I mean, that's really not my thing. I'm like, it's an office, it's a place of business, and he's got dogs running around and everything else. But it worked. It worked. And when Steve left, you know, I watched today the speech that he made when he won the Warhorse Award. And he talked about the entire speech was, at the end was Tiffany. He said he wouldn't have been there if it weren't for Tiffany. Wouldn't have been standing if it weren't for Tiffany. All those years. And he talked about the public defender's office, and he talked about how nice it was to come home. And I gotta tell you, that hurt me in 2018 when he came back home. Because I wanted to have that home with him in my office and share space with him and learn from him. But the funny thing is that, you know, 2018, 2019, hell, 2023, someone comes to my office and they're like, I'm going to get rid of my public defender. Who's your public defender? Steve Cline. Save your money. Right? Because what were they going to do? They were going to hire a private defense attorney, all 100% of us. And what were we going to do? If it was Dominic, if it was me, if it was people far better than me, far more experienced than me, they were going to talk to Steve anyway. You know, and that's the thing. Everyone talks about different aspects of life, but Steve was, you know, I think what makes this most difficult is it's not work that I'm gonna miss Steve. You know, yeah, there's a void, but it's a holiday. It's a That's been a moment in my life, 15 fucking years, and he wasn't there for it. My daughter's life. It's the kind of person that my family's in New York, my family's in New Jersey. You have memories that'll never be replaced when you're a kid. But as an adult, as a man, as a father, as a lawyer, as someone trying to be something in this community and learning from watching him, cannot be replaced. Cannot be replaced. And just walking in this fucking building this morning. 42 years old, I spent 5 minutes crying in the fucking Hotel Republic bathroom. I didn't want to come in. I didn't want to come in. I want to go home. I envision him, Steve's the type of guy that made you feel like he made you feel like a better lawyer, but he also made you feel like a worse lawyer. He's the type of guy that made you feel like a better man. But I tell you, there are few things in life as demoralizing as watching my 7-year-old daughter notice that blows by me to fix something. Because I'm just gonna go to Steve. And I have no fucking clue how to do this thing. No clue. He gets it together in about 6 seconds. So he had that rare combination to, not in an intentional way, but to make you come away knowing you can never be him. You should never try to be him. You should just appreciate him and savor him. So, you know, as a friend, as someone who I consider my family and always will, you know, I know how much you all meant to him. So thank you all so much.
As I like to say with my Super Steve, and just be the best and believe in what you're doing because he believed in all of you. So thank you very much for letting me.
Thank you, Tiffany. Possible second. So just the last before we leave. When Steve came to us and said that he wanted to come back to the public defender's office, there were some people that actually thought that this might not be a great idea because we had never, ever hired a lateral before. And there was all this talk, oh, this is going to be bad for morale, and what are people going to think, and blah, blah, blah. Fucking crazy. Fucking crazy. How great a morale move it turned out to be. So, best thing you ever did.
Best thing I ever did.
Yes, right.
Best thing I ever did.
Thank you all for being here. What a wonderful testimony amidst all the sirens and construction work and sheriffs, families, and everybody else walking around. What a wonderful tribute to a wonderful guy. I'm just gonna go for a walk and do some thinking. You're free to walk in whatever direction you want. Steve was a restaurateur and a bar owner, so I'm sure he would appreciate you going and spending some money locally. We're going to be putting something together with the court very soon and send something out so that we can honor him again here in the Coliseum where he did so much good work. There's really nothing more to add. Thank you.